Hello, and welcome back to the Colgos Operation, a 1940s war game set in a fictional version of South America. We join the action down here on the southern shores of Lake Valencia, where Montana Force, on the defending Abrusian side, attempts to hold off Task Force Terra, the Colgosi force determined to break through and complete the envelopment of Alamo Force up here on the northern side of the lake. Let's get into the battle and see how things shook out. So, I began the battle, as I always do, by finding terrain on Google Earth. I mapped it out onto this grid at a scale of 1/4 inch to 100 meters. For gameplay purposes, that's 1/4 inch is 1 unit of either movement or range. I always do this on graph paper first in a nice clear pen line, so then I can make as many photocopies as I need if the battlefield gets too muddy with action as I sketch everything out in pencil. So, walking through this, what I have to show here is the final state of the battlefield as it is mid-morning on this final June 15th, I believe. So, what has happened here is the Northern Battalion of Colgosi Infantry attempted to drive their trucks straight up this road along the inside corner of the lake there. The Abrusian Infantry were well dug in the forest here and were able to take out many of the leading elements of that convoy, blocking the road temporarily. However, in the Fistful of TOWs rules, wheeled vehicles get such a massive speed boost on roads that the little deviations around blocked vehicles were not enough to halt the advance. And so after a brief skirmish in this town up here to clear out the last of the militia holding on there, about half to a third of a battalion of infantry were able to escape north off of the map there. Though, as you'll see on the casualty sheet, casualties were a little lopsided. And I guess this is what you get when you decide you're going to push a force through at all costs. I believe we had several companies destroyed entirely on the Colgosi side. The Abrusians fared a bit better. Their little L3 tankettes were stashed behind the ridgeline up here. Something that I mentioned in my last video is I was concerned with how underpowered those were. And I gotta say, in this battle, they showed up and they proved their mettle. An important thing to note is, let me pull up their stat line for you here. There we are. An important thing to note, they have a little pea shooter with a penetration of 1. In the Fistful of TOWs rules, if you can close to short range, which is half of your normal range, you get a +2 to penetration. So, penetration of 3 is just enough to deal with the front slope armor of both the M3 Stuarts and the M8 Greyhounds that the opposition is bringing. So that is exactly how I played them in this battle here. I stashed them in terrain, kept them hidden, and then when the opposing armored cars came out to play, I would spring the little track tankettes out and ambush at very close range. They took heavy losses doing this, but I think that was the best way to make use of those little guns. And overall, they did prove more resistant than I expected. This was in part due to me underplaying the Colgosi side, because the same dynamic happens in reverse here. Their guns, as you can see there, have a penetration of 5, which means at long range, 1,200 meters, 50% of normal range, they take a -2 penalty. So they have a penetration of 3, which, lost the little tankettes here. Penetration of 3, more than good enough to knock out a little L3 tankette. So towards the end of the battle, I had the Colgosi side kind of sit back with their armored cars and plink away at range, and that proved very effective, especially when they had withdrawn to where the tankettes had to cross open terrain. So, nice, interesting little dynamic developed there. Now, as far as the campaign goes, since this is the last day of the campaign, we are not going to actually tally up these losses and do the destroyed, routed fractions to determine who's combat effective in an hour. But I do want to look down here. Let's do some on-camera math here. 2, 4, 7 platoons of rifle infantry, 3 machine gun platoons, and a weapon platoon all exited the map north. That's the size of the force that made it off here. Now, if you look at the big map, a lot of paper shuffling this episode. If you look at the big map here, and I get some stickers out of the way, this road here will bring them out here to the main highway that brings them north around the corner of the lake and into the southern flank of Alamo Force. Now the question is, what can 2.5 companies, 3 companies of rifle infantry in trucks with no armor, no ammunition, and no support do to turn the tide of a battle the size of what we have brewing up north? So I don't know if I think it was episode 5, we did the order of battle. This is the big one. This is the one for all the marbles. So, I can't decide, which means I'm going to break out the dice and do something on camera. And whenever I don't have a good idea of the odds, I do like to go for a nice, even Stevens 50-50 coin flip. So, there we are. On a 1, 2, or a 3, I'm going to say that nothing happens. At some point, once those trucks get off screen, they get bogged down, they run into some outlying pickets, the remaining Abrusian armor catches up to them, because the Colgosi lost almost all of their armored cars, forcing that little entry there, and the Abrusians had plenty in reserve. So, on a 1, 2, or 3, this little skirmish has no larger impact, aside from the fact that it tied Montana Force up for this phase of the battle. On a 4, 5, or a 6, I'm going to say that a random number of turns into this battle up here when we run it, I'm going to divert troops from the Alamo Force side off to the south to help contain this little issue. So, here we go. All right. So, looks like there's either some kind of rear guard, some military police managing traffic in the rear. All they have to do, really, is slow up those Colgosi trucks for a few minutes, and then the armored cars, which the Abrusians have down here, that were carrying out an ambush from the woods. These armored car companies here are eventually going to plow north along that road and catch up to the last of that element. So, all in all, this battle is essentially just a diversionary action to keep the enemy force from concentrating up here. And it did serve that purpose. I have not run the final battle just yet, but I have a sense that once I get there, the Colgosi will be very happy that the Abrusians have several companies of armor puttering around on the southern shores of the lake here, instead of on the main battle line up at the decisive point of action. So, that's all for this video. It's a pretty short one. I'm going to start working on that final battle fairly soon, and I might turn that into a 2-parter. We'll pick it up halfway through, see how things are going, because that's also going to be a bit of a beast and take me a while to run. So, that's it for today. Just a quick little battle. Pretty fun. Going back to our research questions from the very beginning, I believe the campaign has been generating engaging battles so far. I would not necessarily count this as one of them. The objective of exiting enemy units off of the edge, at least the way I laid it out, felt a bit gimmicky, because I had units on Overwatch all through here, and I was able to just run a giant column up and attrition off the front of the column, and eventually everyone defending ran out of Overwatch attacks. I'm realizing after the fact that what I should have done is entrench them on the road to force any units coming up the road into close combat. But live and learn. I will probably do something similar in the Battle of North Lake Valencia when I get around to that. So, lessons learned. Going to do a little better next time. Learn a little each time. It's good. It's fun. And that's all for this week. See you guys next time.